Setting stage for the next round of talks that will be taking place between the government and farmer unions. Let me welcome new guest joining us now. Maheshgupta is the CMD of Kent RO Systems. Saket Mishra is an investment banker. Before I get a quick reaction from both of you, Kanchan Gupta, the focus of course is on the Kisan outreach, and of course this is coming after what the Prime Minister said in the all-party meeting, that he's just one call away if the farmers are keen on ending this impasse, also adding what Nirmala Sitharaman has just said, that the MSP commitment of the government is being displayed with what they have done.
Maria, I'm sure the farmers are fully aware of the actual spending on MSP, the fact that APMCs have not been touched, and also the fact that Punjab, among all the states, and disproportionately so, is the biggest beneficiary of MSP procurement stroke spending by the government. But reiterating these facts also sort of serves to create public opinion, and to that extent the government is justified in restating the numbers for this year and how they have increased progressively over the last few years. At the same time, I personally believe that the government needs to also rationalize MSP procurement. We end up procuring more than what can be consumed or what can be used, and to what extent that is rational spending, I will leave that to the experts. Possibly it makes good political sense, but does it make for good economics? I just wanted to add a point. In the previous segment, you had a discussion on the health sector.
Yes.
Now we can talk about the central government's spending on health or allocation for health, but we must remember, and it is very important to remember, that health is a state subject. So there's precious little the central government or the union government can do in terms of boosting the health infrastructure in the country, other than providing funds for it or enhancing funds for it. And what the COVID year has demonstrated is that the state governments are still woefully inadequate in their response to creating an appropriate health infrastructure. So that again remains a grey zone, whether enhanced funds for health can actually lead to the desired result.
Okay, Maheshgupta, your first view on the budget, the big picture and the hits and misses.
Okay, looking at the budget and a big picture, I must say this government has done an excellent exercise. They have broken the shackles that your deficit financing should not be 3% or 4.5%. In an uncertain situation like this, when the economy has contracted, taking a bold step to have a deficit financing of 6.8%, borrowing money and spending it on various infrastructure is a very, very bold step and is bound to give good results to the economy. Although the foreign agencies may say that your rating will come down because you have a deficit financing, but I think this rating is artificial. India has never, ever disobeyed what is required to be done. It has always met its obligation. So I don't know why we still get a BBB rating. We are as good as a AAA rating. But why the foreign agencies give us a low rating because of the deficiency is something which I don't know. But the high spending on the deficit financing and spending on infrastructure is a great step in this direction, and I welcome this. Whether all 6 pillars of investment which the government has identified are excellent, and it will boost the economy in the sense demand will be generated. Finally, the beneficial is the consumer, and the consumer will start getting.
And Mr. Gupta, the fact that the health allocation has been hiked by 137%, which is the highest yet.
Yes, and what I like in the health sector is supplying clean drinking water, the mission to supply clean drinking water, the Swachh Bharat and Swasth Bharat, the new campaign which is being launched, I think a clean air campaign, a heavy investment coming in, vehicle scrapping policy coming in, and not only that, I will look at the Ujjwala scheme as well, 1 crore more homes going to be covered is again basically a health aspect, besides the convenience aspect. Let's not forget this.
Okay.
So all this is part of the health which is being very well covered in these policies.
Okay. Saket, your first comments.
Excellent budget. I think it's an exceptional budget in very, very difficult circumstances. The government's coming out spending money on creating an ecosystem where the average citizen can actually find the security, security in terms of how they transport themselves, their health care, etc., to then go out and conduct economic activity. And I think the other steps that they've taken, which is not just to jump straight into adding taxes, etc., but actually identifying new and innovative ways to raise funding. I mean, this monetization of government assets is again an out-of-the-box step, long overdue. So I think it's in immensely difficult times. It's a budget that, frankly, has exceeded my expectations in its entirety.
And is the market sentiment reflecting your sentiment too?
Well, I mean, sometimes I think the market gets over-exuberant. I don't necessarily buy into market as being a proof of a good budget. But yes, I mean, clearly they see the fact that there will be a greater role for the private sector. They see a role of entering into areas that they hadn't entered before. And more than anything else, they've seen that there is no knee-jerk pullback because of this COVID crisis on reforms that had already been initiated. So, corporate tax was low. The fact that they are progressively announcing areas where Indian companies can be set up, can succeed and become global champions, I think that's the best thing for any market, and it'll draw in investors.
Okay, so Tapati, will you see this as more of a continuity of what the government did, Finance Minister herself making those announcements which are being seen as 5 small budgets, mini budgets, and then the budget of 2021?
Certainly a sense of permanence, consistency and certainty in the way tax is being looked at from an overall administration perspective. And that itself is something that many of our investors will want to see as we move forward. And I really hope that this will kind of continue. And there are specific benefits that have been provided in certain areas, for instance, real estate, for our NRIs, the Indian diaspora. That is also positive and will, get us a couple of notches up. From an ease of India, doing business in India perspective.
And the big takeaway, of course, in this budget is that the government will be doing the massive heavy lifting now, and to put the economy on track. The government is spending more, borrowing more. Let's listen into what Finance Minister said regarding fiscal deficit.
Fiscal deficit in RE 2020 to 2021 is pegged at 9.5% of GDP. We would need another 80,000 crores, for which we would be approaching the market in these 2 months. The fiscal deficit in BE 21-22 is estimated to be 6.8% of the GDP. We plan to continue with our path of fiscal consolidation and intend to reach the fiscal deficit level below 4.5% of the GDP by 2025-2026, with a fairly steady decline over the period. I have also provided, on the Commission's recommendation, 1,18,452 crores as revenue deficit grant to 17 states in 21-22. I propose to amend the Insurance Act 1938 to increase the permissible FDI limit from 49% to 74% in insurance companies and allow foreign ownership and control with safeguards. Under the new structure, the majority of directors on the board and key management persons would be resident Indians.
What is the significance of this increased fiscal deficit? That question straight to Gaurav. Gaurav, the last time this happened was in 2009.
That's right.
When the government acknowledged the financial crisis at that time.
Yes, so
this is, of course, unprecedented because of once in a century budget as we are looking at it, because of the times that we are in. How soon will this translate?
So the difference between last time 2009 and 10, when the government actually announced a set of stimulus measures in the wake of the global financial crisis, was when the fiscal deficit went up above 6%. The difference between then and now, there's a big difference. Last time it came in the form of tax breaks and incentives for industry. This time it is coming in the form of direct borrowing for asset creation. So that's the big difference. What happened last time was that there are two things that came out of it. One, it led to an inflation that clearly became a big issue, particularly there was a time when food inflation went up to 20% and the headline inflation remained in double digits for several months on the end. This time, however, the most of the money that the government is going to borrow, fiscal deficit, is the amount of money, effectively is the amount of money that the government borrows to spend, is going to be used for asset creation. A large part of that is going to be used for asset creation, which is a productive way of spending rather than giving tax incentives and foregoing revenue, and that is why you need to borrow. So clearly,
why do you think the government is not hawkish? They are going into it whole hog, I would say.
Because it is
as is being said, as a bold move.
So the reason, it's a good question. The reason the government, otherwise, if you notice, since 2014, between 2014 and 2019, this government has been a bit of a fiscal hawk in the sense that they have assiduously tried to keep the fiscal deficit within a certain limit. But this time, first the fiscal deficit has gone up to 9.5% in 2021, and then it will go up to 6.8%. It'll become 6.8% in 2021-22, means that the government acknowledges the enormity of the problem of the economic crisis. And unlike 2008 or 9, this crisis has been brought about by a public health emergency, which has left a devastating trail across the economy, not just India but across the world. And that is why it is always government thought that it is important for the government to demonstrate that it will do the heavy lifting and crowd in private investment rather than waiting.
Is this also an acknowledgement, Saket, that when those mini budgets were announced, the packages for MSMEs and other sectors, that did not yield the results that the government was hoping for, and hence this borrowing for creating infrastructure or assets?
No, Maria, I think it's more a continuation of the same, and I think what they've done is they've done a sort of stock taking before this budget of what had to happen. Through the mini budgets, I think the main focus had remained, can they get COVID under control? Can the health crisis be resolved? And I think that's been done. And this is more a continuation of the same. I don't think it's necessarily a commentary on what's gone before. I mean, the good thing is it is something that continues the process of what they were doing. And I think what was just being said, that this is a very different crisis, right? Unlike other financial crises where there was a fall in profits or there was a leverage issue, things that were not necessarily hitting every sector of the economy. This is a crisis where effectively work stopped for 3 to 6 months. It's taken us back to, I think, 2016, 2017 levels of of GDP. So yes, we are talking about actually building back and sort of filling a giant hole that suddenly emerged in the economy. So I think it's been a continuation. They have made the they saved their firepower until this budget. So yes, which I stand corrected. I had earlier propagated saying that they should spend straight away. I think they saved the firepower, and they've figured out where to actually put in the money, and I think it's a good thing.
Maheshgupta, your thoughts on fiscal deficit?
Well, to my mind, it has to be done, and they have done it. Because if you don't do it, I think you're looking at a standing car and nobody is pushing the car and car can't move. So if you have to move, you have to put in certain amount of effort to let the economy drive.
So it's the government that has to move the car and push the car.
Absolutely. So you require that today. And they have done that today. And this will come back to the economy. All that investment which government is going to borrow or is going to have a deficit financing, the only hitch is it may increase the prices. But to my mind, prices and interest are in control right now. We are looking at a fiscal policy which is going to be announced. But it's a small, about 3% more than what it should have been, or 2.5% more than what it should have been.
And so why that's not a very...
No, because if you go to the fiscal deficit norm of 4.5%, 4.6%, which many people thought could have been. This is 6.8% fiscal deficit. So, but that's not a very huge deficit bank which we are looking at it, except for this year. This year is a pandemic year, and we know we have gone to 9.8%, and government is going to borrow that and take care of the situation right now. On top of it, we must also look that government is going to finance the deficit of the states as well. Is borrowing and giving the finance to the states as well for the revenue loss. So all this combined together, we know in the world people do that. The other economies in the West, the US economy does this on a regular basis, but is able to take care of their price rise and inflation, and still are able to do it every now and then. So I think it's a time for India to look at it. And since, as has been said earlier, it's a capital investment, type of infrastructure building exercise. And it's not a revenue expenditure that they are paying on salaries. Suppose one needs to pay on their salaries and government needs to borrow money. That's not a good idea. So here the situation is, you are creating infrastructure in railways, you are creating infrastructure in highways, you are creating infrastructure in metros. So all that money is going to get into assets which can be encashed at a later time. It's unfortunate that in the government budget, the balance sheet is not made. As to what investment you have done, what's the asset you have created is never done. It's a receipt and it's a expenditure account.
Okay.
But by this process, they will create a lot of infrastructure.
Yes. Let's listen into more reactions that have come in, and then I'll be taking the final comments from all the panelists.
तो वित्त मंत्री ने इस समय इस बजट में बहुत सारी एक्सपेक्टेशंस बढ़ाए थे इसको पहले, मगर अच्छी बात यह कि सारे एक्सपेक्टेशंस उन्होंने पूरे कर दिए। और जहां तक मैं समझता हूं ये बजट इस समय के लिए और हिंदुस्तान की इकोनॉमी को बढ़ावा देने के लिए, ग्रोथ पे फोकस करने के लिए और एक ऐसा फाउंडेशन ले करने के लिए जिससे कि हमारे आने वाले वर्षों में भी हमारी जो है वो ग्रोथ रेट तेज रहे, उसके लिए सबके लिए बहुत ही मुनासिब, बहुत ही अच्छा बजट है।
We are very, very positive about the budget. It's a totally growth-oriented budget. The finance minister has even laid out the map for the fiscal deficit. She has emphasized on spending on capex. Even if you see the fiscal deficit where we talk about, we were talking about 5%. She has not hesitated to talk of 6.8%. Disinvestment roadmap has been laid out. She has identified the sectors, which shows a very planned way of moving forward. She has covered all the sectors with.
आप इस बजट को अगर गौर से देखोगे तो हेल्थ सेक्टर के लिए और एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर के लिए जो प्रावधान रखा है और पिछले 6.5 साल में जो मोदी जी ने जो किया है और इस बजट में जो देखा है, भारत के इतिहास में कृषि क्षेत्र के लिए और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, गांव के लिए और पूरा जो इकोनॉमी के लिए इतना मुश्किल हालात में महामारी के समय ऐसा बजट दिया, इसको कोई विरोध कर ही नहीं सकता है।
बंगाल को खास तौर पर तवज्जो दिया गया है, ध्यान दिया गया है, क्या इलेक्शन को लेकर फोकस किया गया, ऐसा आरोप है?
इसमें आरोप प्रत्यारोप की कोई बात नहीं है। बजट में सभी प्रदेशों को ध्यान रखा गया, बंगाल को भी दिया गया। हमारी सरकार किसी एक राज्य और किसी एक इलाके की सरकार नहीं है, ये पूरे देश की सरकार है और उसने अपना जो धर्म है वो किया है।
तो आपके नजर में बजट कैसा है?
बहुत ही अच्छा है, सबको लेके चला गया है, सबको साथ काम किया गया।
Government is in insolvency and bankruptcy mode. Its only idea is to monetize assets and sell everything, including stadiums. I think this government, this budget has made the Indian economy even more gloomy and dismal, and I think a lot of us, it's up to average Indians and common Indians to save the Indian economy.
A budget to put Indian economy back on track is what the experts are suggesting. Let me take the final comments, and I'm going to begin with Gaurav here in the studio. What is in it for the states? Or will you be saying that there are certain aspects in the fine print that you will be waiting to read and understand and then come to the conclusion about the states?
So one of the fine print is the states this year, that is 21-22 next year, technically, is going to receive more money from the divisible pool. I think that is based on the Finance Commission recommendations. Just to give out the figures, this year, that is 2021, the states in all totality would have received 5,49,959 crore from the divisible pool. In 21-22, they are set to get 6,65,563 crores. So they're getting more than what they were getting previously. That is one part of it. But the other part of it that the government has made a conservative estimate of GDP projections of nominal GDP projection of 14.4, which is lower than the real GDP projections of projections of both the IMF and the Economic Survey. I think the government eventually the real GDP growth will be higher and the nominal GDP growth will be higher than what the government has projected. That would mean GST collections will be higher than what the government has projected or estimated in the budget, which would mean a large part of more revenues will also go to the states. So states will gain from revenues much more than what the estimates suggest, because the estimates, in my view, are a little on the conservative side.
Kanchan Gupta, focus of course is on poll-bound states. A lot of infrastructure projects being announced, particularly going through the highways that will be going through Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Kerala and other states. Will this lead to more politics, or are you of the opinion that this will be ending? Because, you know, unlike previous budgets that we have seen, there are trains that were announced in UPA years running through several states, particularly which were poll-bound states.
Well, you can look at the allocation in terms of poll-bound states or as allocations for states which are very much a part of the country. So there will be a certain amount of political thinking behind allocations, which is fine, so long as end of the day we have infrastructure or better infrastructure or more infrastructure in these states. Maria, there has been much talk about fiscal deficit, but I think the government needed to be adventurous. This particular year, the government has been adventurous, and it also, by being transparent, that look, we are not going to be able to control our fiscal deficit, that it is going to rise and it is going to stay at a particular high point till 2025-26. You have also sent out a very clear message to the world at large. So these ratings companies which keep on fixing the government on fiscal deficit, they will also get a message, and that the government is not captive to the wiles of the ratings agencies. So that is a good thing to my mind. A last point that I would like to make is that ultimately what matters, I mean the political economy behind the budget, or the politics behind the budget, should be whether it creates
a
certain amount
update for our viewers. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to give his thoughts on the budget any moment, and we'll be cutting to that. Yes, Mr. Gupta, go ahead, finish your point.
Yeah, so whether it creates a certain sense of confidence and among the people.